Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a bit of a translator's journey. We're going to take the messy, chaotic real world and translate it into the strict mathematical language of machine learning. It's a process that's absolutely crucial, but honestly, it's surprisingly misunderstood.
Because here's the thing. Your machine learning model isn't just limited by the algorithm you choose. It is entirely limited by the data you feed it. Seriously, a super simple linear model with great features will easily outperform a massively complex neural network if that network is trained on messy data. That whole process of creating those great features, that's what we call feature engineering.
Okay, let's take a look at this workflow. We can visually pinpoint exactly where feature engineering sits, right smack in the middle, between your raw data and your predictive model. And surprisingly, most of the heavy lifting in machine learning actually happens right here, long before the model ever starts training. If you get this part wrong, well, nothing else really matters.
So, here is our map for today. The feature engineering problem, taming numeric data, translating text, encoding categories, model-specific features, and finally, avoiding mistakes.
Part 1. The feature engineering problem, translating the real world.
Moving right along to Part 2, taming numeric data, dealing with scale and spread.
So mathematical models expect pristine numbers, right? But real life gives us text, timestamps, and really noisy counters. Our first dialect to translate is numeric data, and sometimes changing the data itself is way more powerful than swapping out your model. Take a massive raw count, for example. Converting that into a simple binary yes or no can be incredibly effective. Just by coding something like played equals the integer of song count greater than 0, we completely protect against crazy outliers. We don't want to confuse the model trying to figure out the difference between a song played 5 times versus 500 times. Or think about binning, where we split continuous values like age into set buckets. That actually helps simple linear models capture nonlinear behavior perfectly.
Now, what about numeric data that spans huge orders of magnitude? For that, we use a power transform. The most common one you'll see is the log transformation, literally just x equals log of x plus 1. This elegant little mathematical function takes massive, unwieldy values and compresses them down into something highly manageable, which keeps our models perfectly balanced.
Just look at the top graph here. We've got a heavily skewed raw count, all bunched up on the left with this massive heavy tail. But check out the middle graph. After we apply that log transform, the data gets beautifully smoothed out into the exact kind of normal distribution that linear models absolutely crave.
All right, part 3, translating text for machines, reading between the lines. Here's a wild thought. Computers are completely blind to text. I mean, they have zero idea what a word even is until we engineer a way for them to read. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we mathematically represent the tone, the sentiment, and the core subject of a written paragraph using nothing but numbers?
Well, the simplest translation is what we call a bag of words approach. This technique literally just creates a massive flat vector and counts how many times every single word in your entire vocabulary appears in the text. If the word puppy shows up 3 times, its slot in the vector gets a 3. If aardvark doesn't appear at all, it gets a 0. You can even level this up by using n-grams to capture short, multi-word phrases. It's super simple, but honestly, highly effective.
But there's a catch. Bag of words has a pretty big flaw. Common words like the and completely drown out the actual meaning of the text. That's where TF-IDF steps in. Standing for term frequency inverse document frequency, it basically acts as a feature scaler. It turns down the volume on the mathematical noise of everyday words and highly cranks up the weight on the rare ones that actually carry true meaning. It lets the computer instantly grasp document similarity.
Moving to Part 4, encoding categorical variables, turning labels to numbers.
Let's talk about categorical variables. We're talking things like cities, colors, or user IDs. These represent labels, not magnitudes. If we just lazily labeled categories as 1, 2, and 3, the model would actually think that 3 is mathematically greater than 1. One-hot encoding elegantly fixes this by turning those strings into simple, non-overlapping binary columns. Essentially, only one bit can be hot or true at any given time.
You can see it right here in a straightforward one-hot matrix. Red becomes 1, 0, 0. Blue is 0, 1, 0. Green is 0, 0, 1. It really proves just how clean and effective this translation can be. If you have a small number of categories, it is absolutely perfect.
But hold on, we immediately hit a massive wall in the real world. Think about an ad-click dataset. What if your data has 10 million unique user IDs? If you try creating a one-hot column for millions of unique users, you'll end up with a matrix so massive that your computer's RAM is just going to explode right then and there.
So, for massive categorical data, we pivot to feature hashing. This technique maps millions of categories into a fixed number of buckets. Now, yes, you do sacrifice a little bit of interpretability here, because sometimes two different IDs might share the very same bucket, a collision. But the trade-off is huge. Your memory usage becomes completely predictable, and your training stays incredibly fast.
And if you're using tree-based models, check out this incredible alternative called bin counting. Look over on the left, we have a huge, sparse, one-hot matrix. Now look at the right. Bin counting replaces that giant array with small, dense features based on historical statistics. So instead of a massive column for user ID, you just hand the model that specific user's historical probability of, say, clicking an ad. It is smaller, it's denser, and it's far more efficient.
Part 5. Model-specific feature engineering. Tailoring to the listener.
You know, a good translator always tailors their message to their specific listener, right? Well, feature engineering is essentially model engineering. If you're working with scale-sensitive models like linear regression, PCA, or k-means, you absolutely must scale and standardize your features. But if you're using scale-agnostic models like decision trees or random forests, they usually don't care about scaling at all. They will, however, struggle heavily with massive one-hot encoded matrices. You always have to know your listener. You can even try model stacking, where you use a heavy model to automatically generate new features and then feed those features into a lightweight model for super fast production inference.
And finally, Part 6. Avoiding common feature mistakes, the traps of translation.
Okay, I really need to slow down right here and warn you about a few fatal traps. The biggest one is data leakage. This happens when you accidentally reveal information to your model during training that it would never actually have access to in the real world. Like, imagine using the final target output to calculate a historical statistic in your training set. It will completely ruin your model. You'll get wildly optimistic training results that just crash and burn the second they hit production. Oh, and another quick trap. Never normalize sparse bag of words matrices using centering. Subtracting the mean turns all those zeros into real numbers. Suddenly, your nice sparse matrix becomes totally dense and boom, your memory usage explodes.
To absolutely guarantee that you avoid data leakage, your training pipeline must strictly, unconditionally respect the chronological flow of time. You compute your statistics on your past data, you train on your present data, and you evaluate on your future test data, always moving from past to future. Never, ever the opposite.
Which brings us to our final takeaway for this explainer. The smartest model in the world cannot rescue poor features. But great features, they can make even a simple model perform like an absolute expert. So, based on everything we've uncovered today, what messy, chaotic data will you translate to make your own models perform like true experts? Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.